Russia says it has started to exit the city, but the process could take weeks. So why is President Vladimir Putin's troops in retreat from what was their biggest gain? Well, Scott Lucas is Professor of International Politics at the Clinton Institute at the University College Dublin.
First of all, Anna, trying to analyze the situation, this is what I think we have in Kherson province, both in the city and the surrounding region in southern Ukraine. And that is, there have been preparations for weeks by Russian commanders to withdraw from Kherson City. That is especially true after the replacement of the overall commander of the invasion, General Surovikin, last month. Russian forces have been moving out valuable items that they can pull out. In other words, any infrastructure that's mobile, they've been lifting it. They've been lifting the capacity for the internet out of the city. They've been looting. The museum in Kherson has lost all its valuables, and all the big statues to Ukraine's heroes are gone. So we've been seeing them prepare for this, and then we saw them prepare with the evacuation, or actually not evacuation, with the forced movement of Ukrainians out of Kherson. They say 70,000. And it was just a matter of time before the question was, do the Russians make a last stand, or do they actually pull out their forces, who, if they stayed, would be cut off? They'd be cut off because they're backed up against the Dnipro River. That said, the Ukrainian military government being very cautious this morning, because even if there are only a handful of Russian forces there, they'll fight to the death. And also because the Russian withdrawal, in line with the rest of Russian operations, may not be orderly. It could be quite chaotic. It could be a bit of a scramble to get out of there. So the Russians, for example, are trying to blow up the bridges out of Kherson to prevent Ukrainian forces to cross the river. And so what President Zelensky said last night is, we still move carefully. We still move gradually. So I don't think it's a Russian trap that they're going to launch this major surprise ambush and turn defeat into victory. But I do think that you don't just rush in if you're Ukraine. Now, the question you raise is, how does this change from September 21st, when Vladimir Putin says, we're going to annex the Kherson region, as well as Zaporizhia, the region next door, as well as two regions in eastern Ukraine? What was he deluded? What went wrong? That announcement, Anna, was already a move by Putin to try to salvage something from the Ukrainian counteroffensives that were even moving and advancing in the south and in the east. And it was, if I can rally my people, if I can rally my military forces, if I can mobilize news forces, if I can somehow convince Ukrainians to accept us, then we can make this Russian territory. And I don't think it was ever viable. I think it's even a sign of the fact that Putin is almost delusional in thinking he can win this conflict. But it was always a defensive move in September, and now we have the confirmation that no, you're not going to annex this and make it Russian territory. If anything, I think by early 2023, Russia loses all of the territory that it has taken in this year, in this 8 months of its invasion.
Given the context that you've just explained and the way we can view this situation at the moment, it seems like it's very pivotal where we're at right now. I see that there is one Ukrainian MP, Oleksiy Honcharenko, who has said that this is a huge morale boost for Ukraine and that Russia has lost the war. Do you feel in any way that it could be a bit premature saying that? I mean, we know we've heard words of caution from the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, but it does feel like yet again we may be at somewhat of a pivotal moment in the war in Ukraine.
This is not just a pivotal moment. This is the day that Vladimir Putin is defeated. While being cautious about the military operations that are to come, while recognizing that Putin will still try to break international support for Ukraine, primarily through his energy war, this is the day he lost. And I need to explain that to your listeners, because there will be skeptics out there. Kherson City fell to the Russians in the first days of the invasion in March. It is on the Black Sea, or it is on the Dnipro River leading from the Black Sea. It is a vital city for the Ukrainian economy, It is a vital city that Russia had to hold to achieve its objectives. For example, if Russia wanted to go further along the Black Sea and try to capture Odessa. Symbolically, it was also a marker, which is Ukraine cannot stand in front of us. They may try to hang on for weeks or months, but look, we have Kherson City. Now, what has happened as I speak to you now 8.5 months after the invasion is Russia has lost that symbolic victory, and strategically, it's lost much more. Because if Ukraine advances, or I should say, when Ukraine advances through the Kherson region, then it is able to control the supply routes that the Russian military uses to Russian occupied Crimea. Now, your listeners may know that Crimea was annexed by Russia in 2014, 8 years ago, when Russia tried to counter the fall of its ally, President Yanukovych. And so now, if Ukraine is looking at not only taking the territory it lost this year, but taking territory that Russia seized in 2014 in the south and in the east, where's Putin's victory? It's not there. And if that happens, if we're talking about Ukrainian forces that are talking about moving into territory that Russia has to defend, having occupied it for 8 years, two questions. One is, does Putin then begin to negotiate and accept what is a loss rather than a victory? Does he negotiate from weakness rather than strength? And two, if he does not negotiate, will there be others within the Russian system who will push him to the side and say, look, we've got to find a different path here, because quite frankly, Vlad's war has cost us too much.
Knowing what we know about the character of the Russian president, it hardly seems that he would be willing to negotiate and not have a victory.
I was speaking on another outlet this morning alongside a British correspondent in Moscow who was putting a different case. And she was saying, look, the Kremlin are making noises that if they are allowed to hold on to those areas in eastern Ukraine that they have seized, parts of Donetsk and Luhansk province, then perhaps, in fact, then they may negotiate and say, look, we will talk to Ukraine about moving out of the south, but we hold this eastern territory. Even if Putin wanted to do that, cut his losses, this government, the Zelensky government, and the Ukrainian people are not going to accept negotiations except on the basis of a full Russian withdrawal, all Russian troops out of Ukraine. That's the precondition. And if you retain Russian troops on Ukrainian territory, then the talks don't start. And do I think Vladimir Putin will agree to withdraw Russian troops from all areas of Ukraine in order to start talks? Absolutely no way. Because bottom line is this. A lot of us I didn't think Putin would go to war in February. I got burned on this one. I thought he would bluff it. I thought he would try to get leverage. And so why did he go in? He went in because, diplomatic calculations be damned, political calculations be damned. This is my legacy, he's saying. This is my gift to the Russian people. This is Vlad's war to conquer Ukraine once and for all. And I see no evidence that he's going to back away. I think he's going to just keep changing military commanders, keep on blaming those commanders if it goes wrong, and then hope against hope that somehow the Ukrainians will greet him as a liberator when in fact they see him as evil incarnate.
Very interesting to hear from Scott Lucas. He is Professor of International Politics at the Clinton Institute University College at Dublin. We'll keep you across all details as they come in about developments on the war in Ukraine here on Times Radio. Still to come, the